I jump into Super Mario's theme song. Every time there's 10 seconds, I just, instead of like staring awkwardly, I just start humming the Super Mario theme song. Do you have a go-to? Do you do anything when you're just standing there in line at the post office and you finally your thoughts are clear? Do you have is it Dear Evan Hansen? What do you do? What do you sing in your head?
Oh, I mean, I sing Dear Evan Hansen a lot. You know what? Honestly, when I'm doing stuff in line with the post office, I'm thinking of a million things I have to do. I do a lot of singing in my head.
That's mom brain. That's what that is.
Yeah, it is. Constantly.
Mom brain is a real thing.
Yeah, and when I go live for some of my website stuff with teaching, I am always just faces. So,
okay, so do you do your thoughts quiet? Do you ever get to a point where you're zen?
I have to force myself. It doesn't happen naturally. Yeah.
Okay. There are differences for sure in men and women. It's interesting for me. I'm always trying to be a discerning eye between what is gender and what is individual. Gender certainly informs certain things, but I think far too often we ascribe things to gender that really just don't need to.
Yeah.
Right? Sports are a guy's thing. Well, sure, but how much of that is cultural? How much of that is men saying hey, ladies, we just don't really want to play with you. You know what I mean? As opposed to, because I got to tell you, the WNBA is real.
It's true. It's true.
Have you watched any of the WNBA stuff, in terms of people's personalities?
No.
So let's start there. We can always start on gender. I mean, I think my default, if I'm talking about social issues, my default is clearly gender. Gender first, and then race.
It's a good icebreaker.
What's up?
It's a good icebreaker. Keep it all together.
Yeah. Let's talk about gender, and then we can talk about race. I know. I hate. I'm look. I just did last week. I did Art While Black, and I had Ren.
Yeah. I apologize. I haven't seen the whole thing yet. I only started watching it. So yeah. I'm sorry.
So you saw Terry then. If you watched the beginning, you saw Terry.
Yeah.
What did you think of Terry?
I mean, seems like a pretty cool person. I really am embarrassed because I don't have a lot to say about it. But it's on my list to do. You called me out. I haven't watched enough of it.
I gotcha. Terry's incredible. He is an innovative man. He's a creative man. He's incredibly entrepreneurial. I think it's been those of us that are kind of left. There's certainly some of us that have been in the game the whole 5 years, ever since the Comic-Con anime convention boom started. He's one of the few people that was oh, anime is popular. No problem. Let me go watch some anime. He's really innovative. And he's such a, let's boil it down to this. Let's boil it down to this. And I think that's what's great. It was interesting to me. Ren was in his basement working out, and so he missed 100% of the notifications. Because earlier we had talked to me and Edward and Ren and Terry, and they were all just Ed was like, "Oh, just let me know," and Ren was like, "Yeah, just let me know." And then Terry was like, "I don't even know what he was doing." And then all of a sudden he comes back, he's like, "I'm ready to go." I was like, "Wow, thanks for the planning." And so me and Terry jump on, and I'm thinking I send the invite. And I think Edward and Ed and Ren are just going to show up because they're all like, "Oh yeah, I'm cool." Turns out Ed was at a protest.
Oh, well, that's a good
never
thing.
showed up. and then Ren, he comes back from working out, walks up from his basement to the rest of his house, and is like, "Oh crap, Brad and Terry have been blowing me up in our group chat the whole time." But there was such a shift in the conversation between Ren and Terry that to me, I appreciated well, thank heavens, if people take nothing away from Art While Black, they're Black people are not ubiquitous. Even if that's the only thing they took away, is that the Black experience is not homogenous. It is not one-sided. It is not, and for people that are unfamiliar with a race, you hear the same thing. All Black people look alike. All Asian, I can't tell them apart, right? it's really, you're just giving yourself away. You're showing your hand.
Yeah.
Right? To say, like, you know, my tale is I always I watch to see if people say black people or African American, and when they say African American, I'm like, you don't have enough black friends.
Yeah.
Because, right? Like one of your black friends would be like, dude, I'm not from Africa. I'm from like Cleveland. I'm not. Yeah. Let me see incredible personalities in the WNBA. I think I'm the benefit of YouTube spying on me and like being able to tell like what content I would enjoy. And the next thing I know, I was watching something, and then yo, Xavier, good evening, good evening. Thank you for joining us. All of a sudden this interview started playing with these. Oh, that's it. Nikita. Oh man, I wish I could pronounce that last name. Let me see if I. Okay, all-star personalities in the WNBA. Oh, that's cool. So there's a whole page on the WNBA where you can. That's cool. Okay, so let's do this. Share screen.
I was gonna say, yeah. Let me see what you're seeing.
Yeah. This is why I decided to use StreamYard. It is incredibly. Look how easy that was.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Okay.
So, I believe this is the woman who has a sister in which both sisters ended up in the WNBA. Oh. And I got a chance to listen to the interviews from these women. And there is, you know, the WNBA has a marketing problem. You know, I first became aware of the issue with gender equality in sports from the women's soccer team.
Interesting. What happened?
So you are not familiar with what's going on with the women's soccer team, the U.S. women's soccer team?
No, because I'm one of those women that fall in the stereotype that I don't follow sports.
Okay. So it's so let's see if we can do this. Pay parity between U.S. Well, that was easy. In U.S. soccer. According to the documents obtained by The Guardian, the current labor agreements with the U.S. Soccer would pay each member of the women's team $260,000 for winning the World Cup, compared to $1.1 million for each of the men's players.
Wow. Okay, that's actually a lot different. Because for a minute, I was already hearing like somebody in my head being like, "Well, if there's not as many people in the stands, then how can they pay them more?" But then I'm like, "That's a huge difference."
Okay, and guess who has more fans in the stands?
Women's soccer has more fans in the stands?
It's the women's team.
No, they do not.
Guess who's won the championship in the world soccer, the women's or the men's?
Well, I think I know the women's one because you're asking me that question, but also I think I was aware of that.
Okay. It's huge. The women's team, let's see. Here we go. U.S. Soccer said it paid the women's national team players a base salary of $100,000 and an additional $67,000 per player as a salary for playing in the national. Where's the men's? Where's the men's? Oh, let's just say this: the men get more money for losing a game than the women get for winning a game.
It's pretty. That's pretty.
I gotta tell you, like the numbers don't lie, people do.
Yeah.
So there's actually a lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
That they filed. The pay disparity, the disparity in pay, it's very real. It's very significant, and they've. This is gonna autoplay. Okay, good. It's muted. I think I need to pause it just so my computer doesn't feel like it's being abused. It is disgusting. It is huge. It is steeped in gender and stereotype. Gosh, there's too much here. But for anybody that has not been made aware of that there's a lawsuit, how bad the disparity. I mean, you just saw 1.1 million per player for the men to win.
Yeah.
250 grand for the women to win, of which the women have done, of which the men often find themselves out in the first round. Right? Because globally, soccer is not. Oh, yeah, you're right, Xavier. Yeah, Xavier's like, whoa, yeah. It's very real, and it's not performance based. Because for years, the argument has been, well, the men put fans in the stands, which is literally, this is not to rail on you, but it is to reveal the bias. Your first thought was, well, are the men putting butts in seats? The answer is no.
Yeah,
they're not. But that's an uneducated argument that comes out of far too many people who, for whatever reason, feel the need to comment. And it's not. It's completely it's not factual at all. So I first became aware of what the issue was regarding women in sports when I first learned about the women's soccer team. It's huge. It's absolutely. It's I can't say it's unconstitutional because it's not in the Constitution. But the bottom line was that the facts reveal that the women absolutely were correct. They're being discriminated against according to their gender. The facts say they're far more successful than the men, and that they should be compensated. Even remote, like Bobby Jean King is where this all started from. Are you familiar with the case of Bobby Jean King?
I'm not. Maybe
Look, I told you. I already warned the audience. Gender is my thing. I've been a raging feminist. I don't even know how long. Like
you're putting me to shame. That's for sure.
No, look, there's a really good book. Let me Google that. I want you to buy this.
Right.
I want you to buy this. In fact, Rachel, if you can find this on the bookshelf, let's send this to Victoria. I'll even pay for the postage.
Send it to me. Oh my gosh.
Down. And here's what I love about this book. Bad Feminist. Oh, I can't even spell. I think this is it. Roxane Gay, Bad Feminist. I'm almost positive. All right, let me see if this. Oh, sorry. You can hear Tishrei in the background.
Oh, he's cute.
He is adorable. All right. This is a text for those of us who constructed our feminism from the pages of Teen Chick Lit, as much from the pages of the musings of the postmodern theorists. Gabe gives us permission to take up the sword of feminism while laying down the shield of policed authenticity. As a result, we complete this book both more powerful and more vulnerable, just like Gay herself. Okay, so what's behind the idea of bad feminism is for far too long, women have felt like they couldn't participate in the conversation of femininity in being a feminist because they themselves felt like they were doing a bad job at being a feminist, not educated enough, not well-read enough, not familiar enough with the subject, have not done the kind of research. Like, for instance, Billie Jean King. Sure, should every good feminist understand that when she played John McEnroe in tennis, that the eyes of all sports, the eyes of men and women across all sports, when they played each other in tennis, a man versus a woman, how big that was? It was as big as William Shatner's kiss, his first interracial kiss in Star Trek. I am aware of these things because I study race and gender. But understand the point of what she's getting at, and we'll find this book on the bookshelf. I'll send it to you. We'll get a good address for you. Is that a bad feminist is still a well-intentioned feminist. There isn't a wrong way to be a feminist. You don't have to feel like you don't know everything in order to feel like you can be a feminist. And so that's kind of, this is her struggle revealing, like, I should be better at this. But whether it's because you have kids, because you don't have access to information, because you don't have a Brad in your life to constantly poke you and talk about gender and race.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, not everybody has a Brad. So that's... No. Yeah, Rachel's like, how many of you can take a Brad?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest. I was like, when you said, let's get on and talk about this, I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah. It's stressful, but you know, I'm like, we got to poke. We got to poke sometimes.
You do, and the reality is that far too many of us put off what we want to do because we like kids. How many times have you heard you will never have kids if you wait to afford them?
Yeah.
And is it true?
No, not really. No.
Not really. You find a way, right?
Yeah.
No matter how many kids you like. We both know people with 5 kids, 6 kids, 7 kids, 8 kids, 9 kids, 10 kids.
Yeah.
And everybody says the same. Like, you know, when Rachel goes to the grocery store, she's like, "Oh, I bet your hands are full," and Rachel's like, "Oh, your face is gonna be full." Like, who has a right to comment on how many kids you have? Rob, thank you for staying up just to say hello. I realize that in England it is much later, so feel free to go to bed and you can watch the replay. So thank you, Rob, for coming by to say hello. Oh, Caleb, that is really nice of you to say. I sincerely appreciate that. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see those people that know me best. That Rachel says I'm quite a lot to take. That people are better for it, but it's the refiner's fire is sometimes it's hot.
I would say, yeah, I'd say sometimes it's hot. I feel like the after like experiencing some of your feedback, I feel like you've actually done over the years. I feel like even now, like you've gotten better at like honing it in so that it's a little bit more palatable.
I'm trying to dial it back. I am.
Yeah.
I'm a lot. I get it. I'm extra. I'm extra. So there's sorry. I love that I forgot which man was there. Like, to me, it was like irrelevant. Like, Billie Jean King is the important part of the story. Like, Rowe, Bobby Riggs, I don't really care. It was some guy, some white guy. What do I care? After 55-year-old Bobby Riggs, a former world number one, declared that he could beat any female tennis player, he took on Billie Jean King in the battle of the sexes. King prevailed as the winner, earning $100,000 and the respect for women's tennis in a 6-4, 6-3, 6-3 victory. So he didn't even take her to the brink, to be honest. She won in straight sets. So this, to me, sure. Should every good feminist know this? Sure, absolutely. But that's the whole point of the learning process. And I think that what keeps people, I think that's part of our conversation tonight. What has kept white people from being willing to acknowledge white privilege? What has kept people from being open to dialogue is that they're aware of how much they don't know. And they are afraid that if that is revealed to the public, then they will not be accepted, that their offering won't be enough. I think it's like the Cain and the Abel thing. I think there are people who sympathize with Cain and miss that it wasn't because he brought vegetables. Right? Cain's sacrifice was unacceptable, not because he brought fruits and vegetables. Because as a farmer, he didn't have a firstling of the flock. He didn't have an unblemished lamb. His responsibility in the community was vegetables, fruits and vegetables. But did he bring the best of what he had? What heart did he lay it on the altar? And ultimately, his jealousy of Abel is his own. There was no, like, you know, Abel didn't, like, drop the mic and was like, check out this lamb, witch. There was none of that. It was Cain's concern for his own efforts that led him to irrational thought and then later to irrational action.
I had never thought of that like that before.
Like what?
Just like, you know, just about Cain. It was all about in his head. And how that applies to white privilege. And it's interesting to connect those together that, you know, basically people are forgetting, like, it doesn't have to be about them. No. And like, we've got to stop seeing ourselves as finished works. Like, we need to understand ourselves as a work in progress. If we as a people will understand that we're a work in progress, then the expectation is very different. But if every time you attempt to be something, do something, you feel like you have to show up as I've already arrived, then in fact, that was our very conversation.
Like,
I was gonna say, I was like, I mean, this is pretty relevant to me right now.
I was like, why did this sound so familiar?
I was a little nervous doing this because I was like, I don't know if I'm the right person. I don't think I'm still figuring myself out. I'm not sure where my opinions are on all this.
And that's what's important. You being willing to say, hey, America, hey, everybody who's watching, guess what? I haven't quite figured this out. I think that's
I haven't quite figured this out.
But in a lot of ways, that is more helpful than Brad's been studying gender and race for 20 years. And, you know, I don't sound like Brad, so I can't talk to people. But I'm not, I can be the person that helps somebody else come along, but I can't always be the only voice because other people's well-meaning voices don't sound as refined as mine. But I'm going to reach a certain segment of the population, but you will probably reach a broader segment of the population because, all right, another thing, power of, have you seen Power of Vulnerability, which is Brene Brown? Have you?
No, but I'm writing all this down.
Okay. So you can tell I consume a lot of content.
Yeah, you do. You're actually, it's astounding how much. Just being friends with you, I'm like, whoa, where'd you even find that?
How does Brad know that?
Oh, yeah.
How does Brad? Okay, so the power of vulnerability. An easy way to consume this is, you can see right here, it's just a 20-minute TED Talk video. It's super helpful. What I love about YouTube, especially YouTube Red, is it allows me to do other things, whether it be working out, whether it's packaging up metal prints, whether it's driving to whatever. And you can have your phone being used as a map, and YouTube Red allows you for what, $10 a month, allows you ad free, and it allows YouTube to stay on in the background while you do other things. So it's very powerful. To me, that's, for me to get educated, that's $10 a month. If that's what I have to pay to have access to. So Brene Brown's pitch for vulnerability is that this is a huge stumbling block for humanity. That our need to always be a finished product is keeping us from becoming a finished product.
It's powerful.
It's when we're willing to admit to ourselves, I don't think I'm there yet, because expectation. Rachel, you're a big expectations person. If you want to come speak to expectations, you let me know. But it's incredibly important to be aware of where your own expectations for yourself, for experiences you have with others, that when you go out into the world, you have to be aware of how you believe you think it's going to go. Because when it doesn't, that is when people lose their mind. When the police approach somebody and we believe, we understand what that interaction should look like, feel like, sound like, right? And it doesn't, then we riot. We're going to break stuff. Because the expectation was that if you get pulled over, then that interaction should not result in your death. Period. And because we've seen video after video after video of our expectations not being met, we're outraged.
Yeah. I mean,
and for good reason.
Yeah. I mean, I think that in the past, these things have come up, and it's been interesting because like I can even see it in myself where I was like, oh, that's terrible. But it's just that one time, you know, and you're like, and that was taken care of that one time. And then you just kind of like feel better about it afterwards. You're like, well, I got, you know, like somebody was, I hope our judicial system takes care of that, you know, and you're like, somebody will get that bad, whatever, if it was a police officer or if it, you know, whoever did that thing. And then after a while, you just see more and more and more of it. And you're like, well, what on earth is happening?
I'm trying to see how well this search term is going to work. The reason, man. Okay, here it is. Man, thank heavens. If there's one thing I've learned, it's how to search for things. I think that's an important skill that people should. A lot of it has come from my study of Trevor Noah and his careful use of language, and in paying attention to how he uses language, slipping in and out of accents. There are whole podcasts that will go into studying Trevor Noah and how he uses accents and where he uses them and why. And at the end of the day, what he wants to do is he wants to speak to you in your tongue. And so if he's speaking to an Irishman and he slips into an Irish voice, then the Irishman hears, "You're like me." If he's talking to somebody with who is Latino and he has a Hispanic accent, then they hear subconsciously, "You're like me." And so that's a huge part of why he goes in and out of so many accents, is he wants people to understand. Like in his free time, he will fly to places in the world and poke around and ask people questions and get to know the people there. And he does that so that when he speaks to them, he can speak like them.
I didn't know that about him. That's gives me a lot of respect for him.
Yes.
Isn't that problematic though?
Isn't that well, it's only problematic if your attempt is to deceive. If your attempt is to say ignore the man behind the curtain, right? Like if you're the Wizard of Oz, you present yourself to the world as the authority on all things, and by doing so, you want no one to question you. But at no point is he saying, "I'm not open to the question." He's saying, "Hey man, I've thought about this like you, and I want us to have a dialogue." If you constantly present yourself as other to somebody,
I've never heard him speaking to like a Latino person in a Latino accent. Like I don't know what you're saying.
Oh well, it's the least used accent that Trevor does. If you watch a lot of Trevor Noah, I'm
just giving an example. Or an Irish person in an Irish accent, or a Indian person in an Indian accent. Like,
so he does comedy all over the world, and his set of jokes in his hour-long set, he uses almost every single major accent, right? Like German, French.
I've heard him do that when he's addressing a bunch of different.
Yes,
people,
yes.
When he's like,
I don't know that Trevor Noah like goes to Spain and then like puts on the Spanish accent for his. But the importance of, oh, there's a joke in there for me, is apparent when you watch how far he. So I feel like you change your name. I've got I never know what to call you because I feel like the name that you call yourself changes. But I know that icon, and I appreciate you popping in, Professor. We'll call you Professor because that's what it says. A lot of the role of not only the role of women, but the role of people in history. Necessity is the mother of innovation. Is that
invention?
Necessity
is the mother of invention.
Necessity is the mother of invention. And I will say necessity is the driver behind social change as well. Like so the reason I brought this up, Victoria, that's on the screen right now, when is the right time for Black people to protest, is because this happens with guns. When there's a gun death, when there's a mass murder in the United States, which by the way it's a US problem. If you look around the world, there are certainly some instances of suicide bombers outside the United States, but the problem of mass murder via gun is a uniquely U.S. problem.
Yeah, in those statistics.
Well, because when it happens in other countries, they simply change the legislation, and they remove easily reloadable clips. They remove clips that have extra capacity. They restrict how automatic the firearm is. Like they do things to background checks, universal background check.
Yeah.
They very simple legislation. There's a really great piece by Michael Costa who went over and talked to, gosh, I'm trying to remember, Sweden or Germany. I'm trying to remember which country it was. And they had a festival with alcohol in which people were celebrating firearms and drinking. And he's like, in America, this would be shut down immediately and someone would have already been shot. And he's like, the European said, yeah, that's because you guys have an unhealthy relationship with guns.
Interesting. Yeah.
So like the rest of the world is aware of how obsessed America is with guns. But are you wanting to slip in or are you just observing? I want to make room for you. Okay.
Although, speaking of Trevor Noah, he had like a little, like, wasn't his show. I think it was like a Facebook something or other. But,
okay.
He says that the reason that there's rioting as opposed to peaceful protest is this idea of society, that someone broke the rules of society.
The contract. Yes.
Societal contract.
Yes.
And that everybody expects everybody else to uphold societal contract to, within reasonable bounds.
Yep.
And when it's broken too often, now the contract's been broken, which means that people aren't obligated to
keep to their
right. And that's, people keep saying, well, it's not Black Lives Matter that's doing the rioting, that's looting, it's these other people. But that's what you get. If people who are prone to chaos notice chaos, then they're going to jump in with chaos. So it's not, you can't just say these are separate people. This is a result of these societal contracts being broken.
That's an interesting point, because I feel like I'm not going to say any names, obviously, but just people I've talked to that are close to me. And I want to say for sure, also, P.S., just so anyone who does know me, it's not my husband.
Well, you're not doing a terrific job at not naming.
Yeah. But anyways, people have brought up to me that whenever we say, like, the Black Lives Matter movement is an aggressive organization and they can't get behind them, they can't support them because they're encouraging like what's going on in Seattle, where there's like a section of the city that's like barricaded with no police allowed in there and things. Basically, they're saying, like, why aren't they calling out these aggressive acts? And I mean, my only response to this point has been, well, that's not their mission. Their mission isn't to go around calling out like aggressive acts. Their mission is to bring awareness to systematic racism in our country.
Yeah, to systemic racism. And let's talk about I have to say the Revolutionary War was not a peaceful protest. The idea of taxation without representation did not result in writing letters to the king. It resulted in the death of British soldiers on American soil. And it's a little weird for me to hear people say that the appropriate response to oppression is to get in line, because that is not what made the state motto, live free or die.
So then the next thing that I hear people say to that is, well, like, I just don't believe that they're being oppressed, or that that's
easy.
We either impressed, or that kind of similar vein, that people are just making bad choices and we have an equality system.
Yeah, let's just shoot black people that don't handle the interaction with the police correctly. Yeah, we should just shoot them. That's a good idea. All right. So let's dive into this. So before we leave this screen, everyone needs to go check this out. When is it the right time for black people to protest? Because it was peaceful. A dude just kneeled on a field of green grass before a game during a national anthem. Super peaceful. It couldn't get any more effing peaceful than Colin Kaepernick kneeling on one knee during the national anthem out of respect. And what was his concern? Police brutality. I got to tell you, peaceful didn't work. If you do the same thing expecting a different result, it's definition of insanity. So let's look at, is 1994? It's not spying on me enough. Nixon goal to target anti-war and blacks. Okay, so that was easy. Here we go. 2 minutes and 45. Let me see.
I think I shared the story with you some time ago, but it's kind of bubbled up to the surface again in the last week or so. Most recently over at Jezebel, piece by Julianne Escobedo Shepard. Nixon policy advisor admits he had invented the war on drugs to suppress anti-war left and black people. And this is this is pretty amazing. Dan Baum, who was writing a book, interviewed John Ehrlichman, and this was back in 1994. But he's now writing about this. He says, at that time, I was writing a book about the politics of drug prohibition. I started to ask Ehrlichman a series of earnest, wonky questions that he impatiently waved away. You want to know what this is all about? He asked with the bluntness of a man who, after public disgrace and a stretch in federal prison, had little left to protect. And now quoting John Ehrlichman, this was Richard Nixon's right-hand man. Quote, the Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or to be black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then heavily criminalizing both, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did.
If there's not a more concrete conviction of systemic racism, 1968, and this was a man who went to federal prison for his abuse of his position in the United States government as the right-hand man of Richard Nixon, who was impeached. He stated clearly, without any room for people to misinterpret, they had two enemies, the anti-war left. I got to tell you, what the hell are we doing as a country if our president went after those people who think it's wrong to kill people? The other enemy of the president and his cabinet and his party and his staff and his government was black people. And he said explicitly, we couldn't make it illegal to be black. So we did the next best thing. And then we embarrassed them and we degraded them and we went after them every night on the evening news to vilify them, to turn black people into the enemy. It is 50 years later. And the fact that white people do not realize what 50 years of implicit bias will do to a person that you hand a badge and a gun to, how many more videos do you have to watch? For anyone who believes erroneously that racism is not institutionalized, you have not watched or read any unbiased work in your life. It's explicit. And if somehow getting it from Ehrlichman wasn't enough, right? Because John Ehrlichman was the right-hand man. Explicitly racist comments between Nixon and, because I got to tell you, almost unanimously, if you ask a Republican who the last great president was, they'll say Ronald Reagan. But the problem with that,
last night I tell you to watch that thing on television. That's it. Yeah. To see those Those monkeys from those African countries, damn 'em, they're still uncomfortable wearing shoes.
I'm uncomfortable watching him say that.
I, for example, just had a call from Reagan, California, and you know, he's been out there and so forth, and as you can imagine, there's strong feeling that we just shouldn't, as he said, these cannibals on television last night, and he said, he said, they're already wearing shoes, and he says, here, the United States is going to submit its state to that, and so forth and so on, and you know, that's typical of a reaction, which is probably quite strong.
So Nixon is calling them monkeys. Reagan is calling them monkeys, and Nixon is calling them cannibals. This is a governor of the largest state in America calling the president of the United States of America, in which they're calling an entire race of people monkeys and cannibals. Reagan is not the last great president. He was never a great president. The idea of trickle-down economics was not an economic system. It was a system of oppression designed to keep as much wealth in the hands of white people as humanly possible, and to enslave an entire race of people to our welfare system so that they could be controlled, because upwardly mobile black people ruined the narrative of monkey and cannibal.
I've never heard that, and that's horrifying. I'm still like processing how horrifying that is that somebody said that, and that I was a leader in our country.
It was the leader. It wasn't, because here's the problem. If somehow he got into power in California and then disappeared into the annals of history, okay, whatever. But he then later became our president. And how many people, Victoria, have you heard laud the praises of Ronald Reagan?
A lot. I've heard it a lot. I actually, when you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, I was like my history teacher in high school, my college professors,
yeah,
people on the news.
Yeah. But here and I don't even have to quote John Ehrlichman. I now get to just play the audio tape of Nixon himself and Reagan himself. And they're saying those words out of their mouth. And I've got to tell you, if I had every phone call DJT has made in the past 4 years, how much do you want to bet that the guy who's willing to say there's good people on both sides, who's willing to say, I don't know who David Duke is, how much do you want to, like, when are these tapes going to come out? Because we just have another racist in the White House. We just have another racist in the White House. Where is the president? If the Rock, have you seen the video from the Rock on Instagram?
No, I haven't.
He oh, man, all right, I'll just keep, thank heavens we can screen share, I guess, right? Yeah. So the Rock did, I think it's 8 minutes. And the Rock. Okay, it's the Rock. All right, screen share. And Jameson, not that I'm ignoring you, I just there's no easy way to talk about some of the things that we're talking about, and I think it's incredibly important for people who are going to be willing to do a serious introspective, like go back and think about some of the things that we're talking about tonight. I think the facts are I'm over people giving me these ridiculously crafted, not truthful narratives of oh, Brad, you're just victim to the media of the left. Well, I just played you the direct quote. I don't need the media to filter information through a lens when Nixon is saying it himself and when Reagan is saying himself. But this video right here, Victoria, 14.3 million views, is The Rock peacefully coming on Instagram and simply asking for leadership in our country to make itself visible, that wherever you are, wherever the leader, because I got to tell you, has there been a TV address? Has there been a person in charge to come out and say, we're going to sit down with the AFL-CIO, we're going to sit down with the NAACP, we're going to sit, to my knowledge, I don't see high-level black leaders sitting down with the House Majority Leader, the Senate Majority Leader, the President, the Vice President. Instead, what I'm finding is, all right, this one's also disturbing. Have you seen this? Oh, man. Oh, interesting. Let's see what this says. What is it? Because the videotape actually has him going back to the van and asking if he should be lifting the empty boxes of PPE for the photo op. Is actually what he asks the cameraman. Should we do it for a photo op?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. A since deleted video by late night show Jimmy Kimmel alleged the vice president carried empty supplies of, well, that's a shame. I'm sad it was deleted because you could clearly, I got to tell you, if you watch and see how they lift those giant boxes of PPE, I'm really sad to know that that was deleted. Mike Pence is shown returning to a vehicle where an individual informs Pence that the remaining boxes in the car are empty. Pence is then heard saying, well, can I carry the empty ones just for the camera? I got to tell you, why are there empty boxes of PPE in the van? Like, can we just be honest about why did you waste the cardboard? Why are they sealed? What was your goal of having empty boxes? That, like, in no way is it is like, I don't understand why this is a denial. It says right there that he's returning to a vehicle where the remaining boxes in the car are empty. I don't care if one or two are full. What are they doing with empty boxes of PPE? That's not a photo op.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, you can see why I have a problem when people say to me that that systemic racism is unfounded.
Yeah, it's hard to. I find it hard to talk to people about it unless they have seen the same things that I've seen and read and listened to. So that's been a hard thing for me. And then also just, this is on a neutral level, but I'm not a very good debater in the moment. When somebody's bringing things that are like, I'm like, I get clammed up where I'm like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess that sounds like a good point also, but one of the things I hear, like, I just feel like it's an echo. I've heard it so many times now, is I guess Carl Tuckerson put out that last year there was only 9 Black people who were shot and unarmed by police. And I asked, like, where are you getting that statistic? And they said, well, it's from police officers are reporting that. And I was like, well, how is that the most valid source, which is like reporting it, self-reported? But then I look like I don't like police or I'm against police, and then people get angry. And I'm like, I don't have anything against like police officers as an individual.
Yep.
I know several really nice guys that I'm like, I went to school with their kids. They coached football in our community. I was like, they're good guys. But I'm like, that doesn't take away from the point. Like,
yeah,
an officer, if you shot and killed somebody, of course you're going to say they were armed, because then you're saving your own neck.
So consent decrees are another really so part of what's going on in the system is that it's the protections that are in place, and there's good reasons to have protections in place, and there's bad reasons. So let me see, consent decree, Patriot Act. All right, so I'll pull up this. How long ago was that? September the 9th, 2000. Man, this is long before what we're seeing right now. So anyone who is concerned about educating themselves,
I watched this video.
Now, what did you think of what Hassan Minhaj is breaking down in terms of? I'm sad that the description isn't. Oh, that's about Netflix. There is a system in place that protects police when they do something wrong. It was designed. First of all, consent decrees were designed to be reviewed. Right? It wasn't something that was designed to just go unchecked forever. And that when something doesn't work well, right, they're designed for there to be a mechanism to amend them and to, right? So part of the issue is the police union that is designed to protect police also ends up protecting what we would call bad actors in the system. So I don't believe in talking about black people without calling my friends that are black and asking 1,000 questions. That's what I had Ren and Terry on the stream, and I asked in front of everybody because I also don't believe, like, I don't believe that if I'm going to turn around and report the answers of what my black friends are telling me about the black experience, too many white people are going to say, like, they're going to just immediately, instead of saying, like, thank you for helping frame this, the immediate response is to defend their behavior or their thought process. And so by having it in front of everybody, this discussion in front of everybody with two of my friends that are, good friends that are black, I remove that layer. They can't, because the context is all there in terms of what, and so again, I'm not going to talk about police without getting on the phone with my friends that are police. And I jumped right on there. And I got to tell you, I'm very grateful. He answered all my questions. He was very open and was very helpful. So for instance, he sent me a really disturbing video it was actually a black police officer who attempted to stop a man who was a suspect in a robbery. But he approaches him from behind. He gets very close to this guy. The gentleman does not yield and then turns around and shoots and almost kills the cop at point blank. And one of the neighbors in the neighborhood has to come out. So you hear the whole thing, the 911 call. In fact, I'll make it available. And I know people are going to say, like, oh, this is helping the police safety argument, but I'm going to bring it up for a really important purpose. Police and almost,
which is good because another thing I wanted to talk to you about tonight was kind of like, is there like an appropriate environment or a place to say, like, to talk about, like, I don't think that cops should die either.
Here we go.
When do you say that?
Okay, so I'm gonna pause it here. It does contain graphic content, mostly because the cop gets shot, and there's a lot of blood, and a neighbor has to come out, and you can hear his plea to dispatch. In fact, this video ends with him saying, "Please tell my family I love them," is what he tells. I mean, he's been shot. So I asked my friend, why didn't he tase him? Why? And here's one of the biggest parts of the problem. He said, I would have gotten in so much trouble if I tased that suspect. I said, but let's look at the facts. Suspected robbery. He does not, if the policeman says stop, we're shooting unarmed black kids, unarmed people in hoodies, we're shooting people. But you're telling me you're going to get written up with disciplinary action if you tase somebody who's a suspect in a robbery? So right off the bat, there's an issue with training. Just flat out. Because I said, look, don't you have a taser on one hip and a gun in the other? And he said, sure. But is it going to fire? Is it going to be accurate? He said, look at the jacket that guy's wearing. That taser isn't going to be effective through that coat. And I'm thinking of all these things that could be done, and he's saying, my training, my training, my training. So that tells me we are putting cops in danger because of their requirements, because of the training. Their training is putting them in danger and forcing them to defend their own life. He said to me, don't you want to come home? If you're a cop, and you Brad, you got 5 kids. If you're a cop, don't you want to come home? And I said, sure, but I don't want to come home instead of, I don't want a police officer in the field to be the judicial system, because you're not. The police officer is not the sentencing judge. The police officer is not the prosecutor. And that's what it was amazing. Immediately he said, on this point, you're 100% right. Cops do not have the right, nor should they, to decide if the person is guilty or not. And I said, my problem with the police is they're denying Americans the right to trial by a jury, which we are granted by the Constitution. And so go ahead. You do that while I look up one more thing.
Okay, look it up. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to talk to somebody about that in a convincing way, because people are so passionate of cops being able to protect themselves, like almost to the point where they won't listen to anything else about that. Because I've said a similar thing where I've said, well, you know, the person was innocent or could have been innocent, and they're dead now. Like, how will we know? Their life is gone.
So
there's a group of people that believe so intensely that police need to have that right, otherwise they won't be safe.
Right. And my argument to that is, let's take a look at the evidence. Every one of these photos, Victoria, is a person who was shot with a rubber bullet. You mean to tell me this person just kept going? You mean to tell me that this person who doesn't have an eyeball now just like continued to advance on the cop? That this guy just continued to be a dick face? That this journalist just kept going?
Yikes.
This is the technology we have. And what I'm saying is, if you believe that someone is going to endanger your life, then I don't care. I'd rather see pictures of this than their dead body laying in the street. Why are we not using this kind of severe force? Look at this. These are people shot with rubber bullets at the velocity that a regular bullet is shot at.
Yeah, I mean that.
But
I didn't even think about this, Brad. That's a good point. I didn't hear that.
If this is just a whole myriad of people that are suspected criminals, these people can face trial.
Yeah.
And look, if you resisted arrest and you lost an eyeball, I'm sorry. Those are the rules. But why are we not empowering our police to use this kind of force? These people have lived, but I guarantee you, these people are getting, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. You're telling me that that person continued to assault a police, continued to make their advance, continued to endanger your life as a police officer? There's no way that you do that kind of damage with a weapon and then you end up losing your, like, that's enough to stop somebody. Why aren't we using the force that is available? We clearly can design weapons that do massive amounts of damage to a human and they still live. This person, if they were a criminal, this person isn't. But I'm saying if you are chasing a robber, a rapist, a murder, then take them down by all means, but take them down with the intent for them to have a trial by jury, their constitutional rights. I'm not saying we treat people that are horrible like rock stars. I'm saying in 2020, we can do better.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Brad.
So to me, Victoria, that's how you that's how you combat that. Yes, let's keep police safe. Let's do it. But there's force available that police can use safely at a safe distance and fire projectile. If you can aim a gun, you can aim a gun with a rubber bullet.
Yeah.
So that's my question is why are we shooting to kill? Why are we using deadly force? And it's being done because of their training. That was incredibly clear as I talked to my friend that was a police officer. And there's no way that I'm going to ask a police officer to do the job of a police officer without the tools necessary to keep them safe. What I'm saying is let's replace deadly force with enough force.
Yeah, well, I mean, that definitely takes, you know, a cop that's making a poor choice. It just becomes way less of a issue because the person's probably still alive.
Right.
So then my next thing that I hope you don't mind, unless you have something specific you want to go from there, I have a question I want to ask you. Is that what do you feel about the defund the police movement, which I think my sister said very well that it's kind of like a misnomer because you're not actually like taking all the money from the police.
Yeah, there. Hold on one sec. Let me just see if I like missed a text message from. I don't know if Rachel's trying to call in or if she's just calling one of the other kids, and we're all on the same like iCloud, and so like all the devices ring at the same. Yeah. So, and Jameson, let me just say thank you. I saw a really cool video, Victoria. It's not all doom and gloom. Have you seen? Have you seen this really awesome image? Let me see if I can get it to come up first. Let me make sure I'm on the right screen.
I hope it's not all doom and gloom because
no, we have to say something positive for sure because this is a lot of heavy stuff that we're talking about.
It is. I mean, sometimes I feel like over the past week, at least, week, 2 weeks, it's just been. I've almost been depressed, just like really weighing all this stuff that's been happening, what the right choices are, like what's the right moral response. Like it's been hard to just feel happy.
I will say that I'm grateful that you're disturbed. And the reason is because I don't think change is going to come until we are. I think that for far too long, white America has remained unaffected by the struggle of people that we live with, that are our neighbors, that are our friends, that are our police people. There are Black men and women in the police force that are fighting in the Army, in the Navy, in the Air Force, in the Marines. And white America has been far too comfortable with what has happened to our Black friends, our Black compatriots, our Black neighbors. And I'm grateful. I think that white people finally being disturbed is going to motivate the kind of crap or get off the pot. At some point there has to be enough. And if it's the riots, great. If it was the knee, if you're a person that watched Colin Kaepernick and you said that was enough, please. This woman, this is one of my favorite images from the protests. This is a woman who survived Auschwitz and went out to show her support from her car, because she gets it and she understands what systemic racism looks like. As a Jew who survived the Holocaust and was branded, reduced to and branded with a number, she understands what it's like to be reduced to the way that we treat Black people on the whole. Certainly I have Black friends and I do not treat my Black friends like that. Many of us, hopefully the stream is full of people who are great friends and neighbors and have their Facebook feeds are chock full of Black people. But this woman who understood what it was like to be reduced, to have her humanity taken away, went out to support her Black friends and neighbors. And it's one of my favorite images. And I hope it lives. It will live forever thanks to the internet. So Jameson, thank you. People that have been through it, they get it. But I don't think we need something like the Holocaust for us to finally understand what it means to be the minority. I'm tired of it taking too much. I don't need the convincing of people that aren't white to have to be too much before they finally say, maybe we should just stand up for what's right. Yeah, right? Like that's what I'm asking for. That's what I'm advocating for, is every criminal has the constitutional right to a jury. And let's start getting rid of people in prisons. Because the reality is that the vast majority of over half the people are in for a drug-related offense. And as we just heard out of the mouth of Nixon and Reagan, it was done intentionally. Not only was it done intentionally to go after the left and Black people, but when you dig further, you will find that many medical professionals testified before Congress about the lack of concern over marijuana as a recreational drug. And they kept pushing them and asked, are you afraid of, are you afraid of, and there's no, do not, before it was criminalized, before it was moved to a Schedule I drug, which meant that you could incarcerate them for very long periods of time, where you could ruin their credit, you could ruin their ability to get a job. Like this, when we talk about systemic racism, putting someone in jail with a felony offense means that there are a host of things that they will never have. Home ownership as a felon, an 800 credit score as a felon, a job that pays a living wage as a felon. We are indicting, we are removing people's humanity. We are denying them the pursuit of happiness, which again is a constitutional freedom in America. So that's the problem with having a system in which the prison, those companies that own prison are publicly traded.
Yeah, I've heard of that, and that's horrifying because, of course, they're going to want more people to go to prison.
Because every inmate, they get a certain number of dollars from the local government, from the state government, from the federal, to incarcerate them. They have a profit motive to arrest people, put them in jail, and then keep them there.
Doesn't make any sense.
I gotta tell you, I don't see how we as a people, as Americans, benefit from that system. How do we benefit from for-profit prisons? How do we benefit for-profit health insurance companies? They are more profitable if they charge you more than the healthcare you consume. How does not create moral hazard with companies? Go ahead.
I was going to say, again, somebody that I talk to often, I could already hear that they believe that if healthcare doesn't have a private aspect to it, then we won't have as good of healthcare because research won't happen. Except
there's a difference between having something like a prescription drug driving innovation. Like, I'm not saying that drugs should be free, but that drug is different than a single payer system. For instance, the Affordable Care Act and the exchanges, this idea that we would put up a healthcare exchange and millions would flock to it, and then because millions participated in it, it would drive down the price for everybody. Well, two things. Who do you think went on and applied for more affordable care? What do you think that person looked like?
People that are paying out the wazoo for their health care right now.
No, if you had to guess which segment of America logged on to try to get more affordable health care, what do you think that person looked like?
Oh, you mean like demographically?
Yeah. Who are they? Who are the people that were interested in participating in an exchange that promised them, or
probably people that are making less than like $50,000 a year, right?
You're seeing it differently. How about the people that need healthcare most? The people that applied for these exchanges were diabetics, chronic diseases, genetic diseases, pre-existing conditions. That's who applied. Well, I got to tell you, if healthy people don't apply, and everybody that applies needs to utilize their medical care to sustain life, what do you think the cost burden looks like for those plans? It's through
super expensive.
Through the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so one, nobody did the research to figure out how many of those people were out there, and so they crashed the websites repeatedly. They were never. It's kind of like Pokemon Go. When the whole world decided to play Pokemon Go at the same time, it was a terrible experience.
Yeah.
Niantic had no idea what kind of infrastructure, internet infrastructure. If anybody should build a server in 2020 and beyond, it should be Niantic, right? Because the whole world was playing Pokemon Go simultaneously, and nobody's ever built a data infrastructure to sustain that kind of weight on the internet highway. And the government had no clue how many people were out there that needed a pathway to overcome being rejected by their insurance carrier. Because before pre-existing condition, oh my gosh, I've been an insurance agent for, I don't know, 10 years, 11 years, 12, I don't know. You lose track of time after a while. And so I'm very intimately acquainted with the ins and outs of the healthcare system. And there's something in California, or there was, called Mr. MIP, the Major Medical High Risk Insurance Plan. Mr. MIP is like this long acronym. And it was designed to be a stopgap, a safety net to people that they knew were going to be denied healthcare coverage. But California is committed to people not dying on their watch. And it's a great example of a state that they have enough tax revenue to do some of these things. It's the world's 7th largest economy. California by itself is the world's 7th largest economy. And because they have that kind of tax revenue, it also means that they can do some things with social programs that other states who are less affluent, smaller, median income is, you know, if you're a state where your median income is 28,000, then you're not throwing together insurance programs for high-risk individuals.
Right.
But once you got rejected from your standard insurance carrier, you could then apply for an open spot in Mr. MIP. And because they did the math, there were only so many spots that were open and available because they knew that you'd break the system. You'd break the whole program. And so they saw it as a measured risk. They should take care of some people rather than deny all people. And so I had a ton of clients who were diabetic, cancer, sexually transmitted diseases, AIDS. There are all sorts of things that you don't have to die from in 2020 that these high-risk insurance programs were designed to, and the premiums weren't crazy. People could afford them. And then the California shouldered the burden of some of it, and then it was a little bit more expensive than a normal plan, but they were not denied coverage. And so that research that was done by California, I got to tell you, wasn't done by the federal government when they put the program together. And that's why you hear educated Democrats calling for what's called a single payer system. And the reason a single payer system is incredible is because if you just funnel 100% of the healthcare costs through one system, then the price becomes like Walmart doesn't have to charge as much. If 50 million Americans are shopping at Walmart every day, which that's a pretty realistic number, then Walmart gets to sell these goods at a much more affordable price than Stater Brothers or Ralph's or whatever it is, because of the volume that they're seeing. And that was the mindset behind the Affordable Care Act. But that 880-page legislation wasn't simple. It was complicated. Is pork barrel, is that a term that do you remember from middle school? So pork barrel is what's referred to as something that has nothing to do with a particular piece of legislation that's thrown in there to get somebody's vote on the House floor.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So the person who drafts the bill, it's supposed to be about healthcare, and they go, I'm not voting for this unless you do this thing for my state.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they throw that in. It has nothing to do with healthcare, but that's what they had to do to get this person's vote. And so you end up with all of these overly complicated, essentially corrupt pieces of legislation because they're wheeling and dealing and they're doing these things. But you asking for something for your one state is really just about your re-election campaign that's coming up in 2 years. Let's just be honest about what drives legislation is being driven by PACs, political action committees, and special interest groups, lobbyists. There are trillions of dollars that are funneled into the pockets of politicians each year through big corporations who would like more beneficial legislation. The problem with that is if we just instead use that money, that trillions of dollars, to create some of these programs, do you understand that universal basic income is a reality? If the trillions of dollars that get spent by lobbyists to create laws that only benefit those lobbyists and the companies they represent were instead spent improving America by setting up things like a pathway to entrepreneurship, so the United States could fund a helpline, a huge helpline, and by huge, I mean 1,000-person call center, in which entrepreneurs of all colors, all genders, all races, all sexual orientations called in with their ideas, and they had an entrepreneur answer the phone that thinks, Dan, that's a good idea. I think you and I can partner together on this. Let's make $1 million, right? and then they go out and the United States government gives them a grant for 10,000, 20,000, 50, whatever it is, and they fund this project. The federal government could even invest in each project so that if it becomes a blah, 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 billion-dollar idea, the federal government gets to recoup the cost of that grant plus incentive bonuses.
Like Shark Tank, federal Shark Tank.
Victoria, if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, legitimately, Americans are innovative. And we, thank heavens, the story of the American dream hasn't died. The American dream died. But the story of its availability lives on. Right? Because the reality is, if you're black, you don't have the same American dream. If you're Indian, you don't have the, if you're Asian, you don't have the same American. If you're a poor white kid, you don't have the same. If you don't have access to credit, education, and somebody who believes in you and a mentor, the American dream is not the same for you. You know, Bill Gates only got to where he was because his neighbor had a computer that he was able to go over to his house, right? So his neighbor had more money than his parents. And he went over to their house, and because of his exposure to that, launched Microsoft. Because he just happened to live on the street with a guy who had a computer. That's it. That's how Bill Gates becomes amazing. He's just lucky enough. And the reality is that for much of Black America, they're just not lucky enough because their neighborhoods don't have computers. Their neighborhoods don't have iPads. Their neighborhood, right? They have a phone. And far too many people, their only exposure to technology, even our viewing audience, if we're being honest, they have a phone. They don't have a laptop. They certainly don't have a MacBook. And they definitely don't. This 27-inch iMac, what is it, $2,100? To buy something that I'm coming to you from? That is a result of my privilege. And look at what I can do. Look at the screen sharing that we've been doing tonight. Look at StreamYard, cool thing that I spun up for us to be able to talk together on the internet. I'm streaming to Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. Look at all that. That is a result of my access to someone who believed in me. Education, I have 3 bachelor's and a master's. My credit, I was able to borrow insane amounts of money that no person should ever be able to borrow to gain the education that I now hold. And I've used that skill of learning how to learn to access the internet, which has given me more information that I now know that other people aren't aware of. It's all a result of my privilege. So systemic racism is alive and well. It is institutionalized, and it has been going at a minimum since 1968. And that is a very clear record we have of when we know that the U.S. government's goal was to target anti-war left and Black people. And there was no removal. Like, those systems were still, at the state level, many states have finally overturned the criminality of marijuana, but do you know it's still legal at the federal level? We don't even have a universal system, and each state is voting on it. But the reality is that if a federal FBI agent comes into your state, he has that right, that authority to take you in for something that in your state is perfectly legal. And that is crazy.
Yeah,
in 2020.
It is.
So, a lot of things were said tonight.
Yeah, I know. I'm like digesting.
Yeah. I am not naive enough to think that all the topics that we've talked about, that even the best intentioned, best educated, most up-to-date person is just going to say, here's how I'm going to implicate my anti-racist.
Yeah.
Yeah. The goal is hopefully that people were disturbed by some of the things that were shown tonight, that we can all stop having the conversation of, but they meant this, but they meant this. You know, when you hear your president and your governor, who then later becomes the president, call people monkeys and cannibals. Like monkey, sure, maybe somebody could do so. Oh, they meant, but when you say the word Africa and cannibal, there's no mistaking what the intended message was from Reagan and Nixon. And I hope that people let that bother them a little bit. I hope it bothers them so much that they act. Other things that you've been wondering, other thoughts that you've had, Victoria?
I mean, I guess I feel like there's a lot of people out there that keep using black people, black figures, like black actors. Like there's a couple one that like Morgan Freeman. People, I feel like there's like a lot of him saying like, we want to stop racism. We need to stop talking about race. Like there's little sound bites of those things. And I feel like that's been slapped in my face several times. And I don't really have like a fantastic response to that other than just being like, well, not every black person is right.
Well, but even more nuanced than that is, it's been a minute since Morgan Freeman wondered where his next meal was coming from.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And
my educated suspicion is that the people in his circle of influence experience the world the way that he does. And if you're a benefit of the system, meaning money, right? Because what I often hear is this isn't a race issue. This is a poverty versus not poverty.
Me too. Yep. Yep.
So one, absolutely, poverty is a huge deal. And we have in North Carolina, if you make more than $700 a month, you cannot qualify for any amount of assistance with your insurance. So as a father with 5 kids, I have no health care coverage because the state of North Carolina said I made too much money and that I should pay $1,200 a month for health insurance. That's more than my mortgage. And I don't understand how, if I make $1,200 for health insurance and $700 for the mortgage, so you're telling me I have to make $48,000 just to make nothing? Because if I make $48,000, I'm going to see 25% of that go away to taxes. So $16,000 is going to go to taxes. But so now you're saying I have to make $75,000 a year in order to afford health insurance, mortgage, taxes, food. Where's my savings? Okay, so now you're saying I have to make $100,000 a year to not need Social Security, feed my family, have health insurance, pay on my house for 30 years. Like, do you see, like, when you start doing the math, we have incentivized the participation in government assistance. And by participating in these programs that are available from our federal government, we have essentially admitted defeat. And in order to continue to qualify for those programs, we can only make so much money, which restricts the horizon that people have in terms of where they can see themselves, because they know if they make a little bit more money, then they're going to get off food stamps. If they make a little bit more money, they're going to lose their housing. If they make a little bit more money, they're going to lose their. So yes, so we have, not only do we have a race problem in America, but we have a poverty problem in America in which we are telling poor people, you must stay poor or you will be hungry, homeless, cold, and broke. So they're right. A huge number of issues that are coming up are a result of poverty, but that is separate from the black tax. That is separate from the immigrant tax. Those are two different things. And white people who have picked themselves up, which, by the way, most of them have education.
Yeah.
White people who have picked themselves up by their bootstrap didn't have a black tax, and in most cases didn't have a if your parents own a home that costs more than $100,000, mine did. Mine absolutely. I sold a house in North Carolina that was worth more than $200,000, which gave me the budget to own my own home in cash by age 40. But because I was willing, I had seen the outside world. I had traveled America, and I knew that there were places I could go where I could stop being in the wheel. I could stop barely making it. I could stop being part of the working poor. I could, there's a reason that philosophers for hundreds of years were only rich people.
Yeah.
Because everyone else was so concerned just trying to stay alive that they could not pontificate upon the things of our existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good vocabulary word, by the way, also.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm married to an author. I have to keep my A game up on my vocabulary or I'll get embarrassed at the dinner table.
That's good. No, that's a good point because I feel like a lot of the low-hanging fruit for problems within the Black community are shared with people with poverty. And so it's a really hard thing to like tease out, because then I often hear people say, well, it's not a systemic racism, it's a poverty issue, and it's like a family issue. We need to like be supporting families more, which I think is true, but I think it's some of the things that you shared here, obviously, like I can't help but start thinking like, oh my gosh, years of drug, like people being charged from drugs, like what has that done to that community for like 50 years? My brain's exploding because that's really the first time I'd heard that or ever thought about that. So I don't really have much more to say about that yet because my brain's exploding, but maybe we'll have to have like a part 2.
Yeah. How to not be racist after you're educated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I guess my initial reason why I even said like, yeah, I'm behind Black Lives Matter is because I believed morally that there's not a problem with there's not a sorry, I got distracted by the words at the bottom of the screen. I'm obviously not like a great I'm obviously not like a great presenter. Yeah. I'm just like a novice on here. I'm just like, girl next door. Like,
what's up?
Yeah. No. So but I just believe that there's nothing wrong with Black people and that they're not inherently like doomed to poverty. And so because I believe that as a core, I've been going forward trying to figure out like, well, how do I talk to people about this intelligently? And so it's really helpful to hear about all these things. I appreciate it.
Good. Yeah. That's my hope. Like, as we talk offline about like, oh my gosh, should I even be a part? And I was like, look, let's just two people have a conversation and we'll just do it in a really public way. And if we're both like, hopefully get a chance to go back and look at that, the power of being vulnerable. And I feel like you will get a lot out of, that's what Brad is talking about. Okay, so I see why I might have to be the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, yeah.
Go out there and be like, I don't know everything.
Yeah.
But I also think that many more people that will watch this video will feel like you, will feel like, why am I just learning in 2020 that in 1968, my president got on the phone with my governor and said explicitly racist things that found its way into legislation that in 2020 is still on the books. Marijuana.
Yeah, I feel embarrassed. I feel embarrassed. Right? Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Let's not praises of Reagan. Let's say what a great president Ronald Reagan was. Let's call it what it is. What a racist president Ronald Reagan was. who learned from his racist president. Because you have to think like racism is hereditary. And whether it comes from social hereditary, because if you're growing up in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and you're seeing, oh, black people eat at that restaurant, and black people drink at that water fountain, and black people go to the bathroom in that bathroom. You can't unlearn that stuff. It doesn't matter how good your parents were. When you walked out the door in your informative, impressionable years from 8 to 28, that's what you saw. That's what your experience was. And then those people, well-intentioned or not, raised kids. Those people went out and had babies and married other white people who thought and saw the world the same way. Like you can't just undo that in a peaceful way in the thought process. I'm not saying like the revolution will be televised. So far it is. But what I'm saying is that what people have to understand about the black tax, what white people have to understand about the black tax is that you just can't say all men are equal. And you can't say, well, well, we can end on this because I've been holding going to the bathroom for a minute.
Sorry.
And Jameson put up something that was real. And first of all, I appreciate Jameson. That Jameson felt so convicted that went back and changed his name to his real name, and that's super cool. To be willing to be, you know what I'm saying? Like that was Jameson didn't have to do that, and that was really cool, Jameson. But the indigenous communities of the U.S. and Canada, which by the way, I'm coming to you live from a state that we stole from the indigenous people. And everybody in every state in America gets to wake up in a land that they stole from the indigenous people of America. That's the bottom line. And our whole history of America is built on the fact that we cleared off the indigenous people of this land, and we sent them to Oklahoma, and we sent them to New Mexico, and we sent them to, and we sent them to, and we sent them to, and to. And in the same breath, right, Andrew Jackson, we tell kids in America, in 1998, I was told in my history class that Andrew Jackson proved president. And that's presented to me. Yes, Andrew also marched in people into the middle of America and left them there to die. So we've got to stop sending mixed. We've got to stop giving people a way out. We've got to stop saying Donald Trump is a terrible person. Oh, but look at the stock market. Donald Trump is a terrible person, but oh, look, my retirement plan is in good shape. Donald Trump is a terrible person, but look at what he's done for our economy. F that. We can no longer in 2020 say that DJT is great, but he might be a racist, but he might be a but. If you're benefiting from the system and you're going to step into a voting booth in November and keep a racist, bigotist, sexist, pussy-grabbing dickhead in office, then your children get to live with your decision. Because we've got to stop saying, but. That is what has led to this ridiculously racist, systemically racist country to where we're at in 2020. Because we keep saying, but. And the real but is, but it's helped me, but I'm richer, but I'm wealthier, but I'm better off. And that's what you're really saying. When you say, oh, this is really bad, but what you're saying is I've benefited from this system and I want to keep it in place. And that's a disturbing thought, and I hope it really bothers a lot of people. But I don't know how else to say it. As a person of morality, you cannot pull the voting lever on Mitch McConnell, on Nancy Pelosi, on DJT, on these people that have benefited from being in the system year after year after year. And yes, Joe Biden is no better. Let's be flat out honest with that. But we have got to start moving back towards not saying whatever we want to. There's a certain amount of decorum that should be part of the human experience in which we consider the other person's thoughts. And I hate that all of the thoughtful, well-meaning, the Andrew Yangs, the Pete Buttigieg's are gone. I hate it because what are we freaking left with besides two old ass rich white men?
Yeah, I know.
It's the worst.
It's the worst.
It is the worst. I have never felt more dread heading towards an election than I have in this election.
Well, you're not alone.
Nope.
So
Nope.
Whenever I think of that, that makes me ready to go make some change. I'm like, oh gosh.
We have to. We have to. At this point, I'm willing to vote for anybody who isn't in office. I will take any candidate that's not currently in office because we cannot continue down the path that we're on. We keep re-electing. If your senator has been in there 5 terms, pick someone else. If you're congressman or woman, this is the 8th time there. Strom Thurmond was re-elected like 8 times. Are you aware of Strom Thurmond of South Carolina?
No, I don't know much about him.
One of the most racist human beings to ever walk the earth, and was the representative.
Oh, is that the guy that said that women were a lower cut of meat or something?
Oh man, all I had to do was just type in Strom and then TH. Clearly my computer I've yelled loud enough that it's finally spying on me appropriately. Strom Thurmond quotes. Man, I'm sure we'll all, without even knowing what this is going to happen, I'm sure we're all going to be. I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that there's not enough troops in the army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit, into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes, and into our churches. That is an 8-term senator. That's a quote. It is a matter of common knowledge that the government of South Carolina is under domination of a small ring of cunning. What is that word? Conniving men. Wow. It is a matter of common knowledge that the government of South Carolina is run by a small ring of cunning, and that's his quote about his state. Martin Luther King demeans his race and retards the advancement of his people.
Yeah.
So if you were not aware of who Strom Thurmond is, he is a very disturbing individual who was reelected 8 times. 8 times. So just vote for anybody that isn't currently in office. That's all I can say. If I'm giving out voting advice, it's that we have got to pull the lever on any. If you see an I next to their name, vote them out. Just pick a different person, because we're not going to get anything other than the status quo if we elect anyone. And I'm sure there are a few good people in government. Many of them are probably first-term senators.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know them.
But I can't. I don't know who they are. I'm tired of either side of the aisle going all the way to one side. I think.
Still a senator?
No, he's dead.
How long has he been dead?
He was a senator until he was dead. I can tell you that. That's the only thing that took Strom Thurmond out of office. When did he die? Death. Graham is another person who needs to leave office. He is DJT's. He'll literally just agree to. And you know what the worst? Have you seen the quotes from Lindsey Graham before DJT was in office?
No.
I'll bring that up.
Yep. Show him.
Yeah. Because at this point, I'm just giving out facts.
Yeah.
This is the fact parade. I know that there's not many facts left in America, but the few that have survived.
Nobody cares about facts.
No one. Yeah. facts are apparently not helpful to people's argument. There we go. Strom Thurmond died in 2003. Let's just show you what the establishment has done to what we thought were thoughtful individuals. Lindsey, say Graham. Oh, great. Strom Thurmond. I can only imagine what those quotes are on Donald Trump before the election. Oh, apparently there's a number of.
Is she related to Billy Graham?
I'll have to look up.
That would be interesting to know.
Let's see. Control F, GOP. Oh crap! Great. There goes my email address. Let's hope people miss that on stream. I already have like hundreds of unread emails. The last thing I need is to be. I mean, I guess if you're gonna
hate mail,
and hate mail's fine. I can set it to auto file. Okay, the deplorable hypocrisy of Lindsey Graham. I don't know, man. Anastacio AOC. I think she goes too far for me. I like to govern from the Senate or from the middle, from the center. Okay.
I'm a pretty moderate person. I feel like the truth is always more in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. Lindsey Graham is in the throes of bootlicking willful ignorance of quid pro quo. Youch. Where are his comments before crazy? I think he literally used the word crazy.
No, you mentioned something earlier that I'm like, it's whole different video. So we're going on, so we don't necessarily have to get into it all now, but that's another problem I have right now where people are just saying like all media is corrupt, so I can't trust anything that you're sharing with me. Everyone, like, they're lying, and I'm like, I guess I can't have a conversation with somebody that thinks that everything is fake.
Yeah. So. Well, it's because it fits their narrative. If they're able to just simply discredit, and I've had that problem, and so intentionally in my last conversation thread on Facebook, I literally cited like 10 different sources. I'm like, I don't know what you clearly are willing to throw out the facts stated by well-meaning, like my problem with somebody going after something like The Daily Show, Patriot Act, what's John Oliver's program? Something Today's Tomorrow. It's somebody help me in chat with what John Oliver's program is called. Is that they have entire staffs dedicated to nothing but fact finding and researching. Like, so you're going to tell me that the Patriot Act is not a legitimate source of news when they have 10 people that they pay in which their only job is to uncover facts, things that are true about the subject matter, and then to compile those facts and present those facts to Hassan Minhaj to give it to us in a 30-minute digestible, entertaining. Like, the reason that so many comedians are involved in telling the truth and to delivering the news is that the facts weren't sexy enough.
Yeah.
The fact that Strom Thurmond was one of the world's great racists was apparently just not sexy enough. So the only way that Americans are willing to consume things that will inform us and disturb us is if we put them in a joke. It's political applesauce. Right? So yeah. Like we're a product of our own. The media is a product of ourselves. Like we get the media that we have because we've refused to listen to the truth for so long that one side is willing to outright lie to us and the other side is begging us to listen, and they're doing it by trying to make it entertaining.
Yeah, I actually literally said that same thing to somebody yesterday where I was like, because they were claiming that all media is corrupt. And I said, well, I'm like, they're reacting to us because of what we're watching and clicking on and sharing. So, because they have to, they're a business. They're just trying to get our business.
Yep. this is the quote I'm looking for. I'm trying to, okay. So this is in 2017, and in which he literally declares that they are bat crazy. Can I find the full? Okay, but where's the other one? My party has gone crazy. Graham told the crowd in 2016, the South Carolina senator lashed out at the GOP frontrunner Donald Trump after adding that he thinks the billionaire will lose the general election because he's just generally a loser as a person and as a candidate. Making light of his own failed campaign and subsequent endorsement of Jeb Bush, who dropped out, Graham called himself the Dr. Jack Kevorkian of the Republican Party, and then put on a Trump hat. So the reality is, and I hate that, you know, people are going to be like, here, I'll pull this. It's reported in the Daily Beast, but I had to click on this because it was so freaking hard to find. The South Carolina last. Okay, so if I just copy this, we should be able to find, because I know the Daily Beast is absolutely regarded as fake news. So let's go find it. Marco Rubio rails against the con artist Donald Trump in the Financial Times. Special report. We're Louisiana, just above sunset. Dear GOP, we can't save you if you won't save yourself. Like I don't know how many different sources I have to find to show people that.
Hopefully, I can.
Oh, and you know what? Oh, there we go. Seattle Times. I think part of the problem is that a lot of conservative news sources simply wouldn't print the quote because he cussed in the quote.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. So from the Seattle Times, and I'm sure someone's going to be like, "Oh, we can't trust them either." They're the plane. Let's see.
All news is fake. Did you know that, Fred? I was joking. I was being sarcastic, but all news is fake. Did you know that?
Oh, sorry, I forgot that the truth doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there you go. You can who will alienate a Republican? A good Republican would defend Ted Cruz after tonight. That ain't happening. If you killed Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate and the trial was in the Senate, nobody could convict you. I was asked the hardest question of my political life. Do you agree with Donald Trump that Ted Cruz is the biggest liar in politics? It's too close to call. Yeah. I know that's exactly when Ted's going to drop out of the race. That's the Canadian week at Myrtle Beach when all the Canadian friends will get 10% off. Oh, gosh. So he really went after his party. Yeah. All right.
Well,
so and this is one of his biggest supporters right now. And the question is that we have to ask ourselves is if he's willing to go from that to saying we saw in the other quote in the full text that he said Donald Trump is a loser of a person and a loser of a candidate. I'm not sure how that translates into that we should all back him as a president. I'm just not sure.
Or him as a senator seems a little wishy-washy.
Yes, or yeah. So so that's my problem right now is it is very difficult to figure out where the truth is anymore. But the only places that I'm really willing to consider getting a ton of news from is somewhere with a research team. The Daily Show, Yesterday Tonight. I'm trying to remember what did somebody last week tonight is John Oliver's program. Last week tonight, Jameson is freaking killing it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, and Caleb is overseas. He's from Australia.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. I hope, I mean, bottom line is if you can find it in a bunch of sources, I would think that, what's helpful about something like Patriot Act is they cram a lot in there. And then they're pulling up article after article. The most condemning thing to me, and the reason I played the tapes from Reagan and Nixon, is I've started to just resorting, Victoria, to playing their own words. If someone's like, oh, it's not possible that DJT said this, then I just go find the video and I hit the play button.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, we have to
like, that's fact.
Yeah. It just came out of his mouth. So do what you want, but there's no more fact than first person, the telling of the
yeah.
Well, anything else before I visit the laboratory?
Yeah, those are the good ones. I mean, those are the high points. Those are the questions. I mean, there's more things to talk about, but those were good ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it helpful to like see in black and white, like that we can pinpoint where systemic racism becomes institutionalized?
Well, I think for me personally, on my own journey of like figuring out, I feel like I go back and forth because I hear, I talk to a lot of people, and then I go back and forth about being like, man, am I just like out of my mind? Like, am I, I'll go be like, yeah, systematic racism thing. Go talk to someone and they break it down. And you're like, am I just insane? It's hard for me to, and I don't think I'm the only one that does that, where you're like, oh, what is happening? So, as you start looking at like facts and things, I really feel like the Reagan quote was really important because it showed a history of something that was implemented specifically to hurt Black people, and it's been hurting them for years and for years.
Yeah.
I don't even know how. I don't even know how you can account for how much damage that's done to a specific race when it's been going on for so many years.
Right.
So, I mean, that's pretty much nailed the nail in the coffin for me, where I'm like, yeah, that's racist.
Is it helpful to have learned that the police have access to weapons and tools that they could be using to bring down criminals, but instead they're being used on protesters?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't even thought of that before, and it seems like an extremely reasonable solution. And so it's frustrating to me that nobody's talking about that. Well,
because guess who has a great lobby in our nation's capital? It's the NRA. The NRA has a powerful lobby and has convinced our government that the right way to protect the Fifth Amendment, right? Fifth Amendment is the right to bear arms, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I think
second or fifth. All right, let's go to the tape.
Second is the right to bear arms.
One of them is free
speech. No, now I'm messed up. Second is speech.
All right, yeah, we're gonna do the first 10 amendments. First, let's do a history lesson. First 10 amendments. Da, 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 da. Let me find a good, easy way to do this. Oh, that's cool. I think this is a teacher website. Go ahead.
And I also feel like we don't have enough. We're not getting our information from enough diverse sources either. I think it's a huge problem. And so people say all the time, like, oh, you're people from both sides have said, you're just saying what the news is telling you. And I'm like, well, we're only listening to two or three different things. So you guys, like branch out and go listen to other things or find other things. Like, yeah, I'm like, you're going to all sound the same. Like, you're just saying the things you heard. So.
Yep. All right. Well, I finally, it looks like a lot of these are tools for teachers to use. Let's see. Chrome tab. All right. This is coming to us from kids.lovetoknow.com. This is on the Bill of Rights, and it's broken down in a way that, this could be understood by a kid. 1, Congress can't make laws that affect the establishment of religion, restricts a person's right to free speech, Okay, so First Amendment is the right to free speech, also the right for people to gather together in a peaceful manner. Number 2, it is the Second Amendment. Citizens have the right to own guns. Now, I will say that that amendment has a bit more text to it, and this is the kid version. I really need to go because the full Second Amendment says the right to bear arms to uphold and maintain a well-regulated militia. And I absolutely believe Americans need a way to rise up against a tyrannical government, but it should be done through the National Guard. I believe that if you're a person who wants to protect America's freedom and you want to bear arms, you should be a trained, educated, prepared member of the National Guard. And should we ever have to face the military, that the National Guard should step up on behalf of the people to take on a tyrannical government, which has the military at its disposal. I absolutely believe in the checks and balances and that the National Guard should be kept independent and well-regulated and well-maintained. And I mean stocked with tanks and bombs and guns and bazookas and everything that the U.S. military has.
It's interesting because I feel like the National Guard right now is used as like
as the puppet.
Yeah.
As the puppet. But I believe that violates the Second Amendment. Because let's be honest, if the president, if the commander-in-chief uses the military against its people, how do we fight back? Because as I watch a police officer beat an unarmed teenager, shouldn't I be able to defend that teenager? Shouldn't I be able to defend that teenager by force if, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sorry, I don't care what you're suspected of. When you pull out the club, I watched a police officer jump off a bike and go after a kid walking on a college campus. I don't care what they said. You do not get to use force because that person offended you. You are supposed to be trained to ignore this and use this. And if you observe a crime, that person should be detained and held responsible for the crime. If that crime was not committed, you do not get to use force. During times of peace, soldiers cannot take up residence in so no quarter. A person, his house and his belongings cannot be searched or seized without a warrant. You cannot be tried for a serious crime without a grand jury deciding that there's enough evidence for a trial. That's our Fifth Amendment, and that's the one in which police are taking away from people. The Fifth Amendment is your right to trial. A person should not be given. A person should be given a speedy public trial. They should not rot in jail. They should be given a speedy public trial by their peers in the state and district where the crime was committed. A person has the right to a jury in a civil case where more than $20 is being disputed. An excessive bail or fine I got to tell you, the Bill of Rights is amazing. As I'm reading this is protect the poor, protect the poor, protect the poor, protect the poor. Police can't steal your house. They can't take your guns. Right? But this is not the America we're living in. Areas and laws that aren't governed or prohibited directly by the Constitution will be decided by the states. When we had our president get up in front of the country and say his law, his rule is absolute, that violates the 10th Amendment of the Constitution that says that any power not expressly held by the federal government is held by the state government. So there's our kid version of the Bill of Rights. Victoria, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me to do this. I know I was very hesitant, but it's good. It's good to be vulnerable.
Right? Good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. So I know I feel like I was overly shy than I typically would be if we were just like chatting in your kitchen. But maybe we can have like a part 2
Good.
where I'm less shy.
There was already somebody who said they're going to tune into part 2 if we have it.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you, everybody. Fifth Amendment is the one where you don't have to incriminate yourself. You can plead the Fifth. That's where
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I'm going to give you credit, Esther, because if I believe in anything, I believe in credit. people getting credit. So, thank you very much, Victoria. Thank you for your time. I know you have young children. We miss you at Color World. I know you having a baby took you out of the game for a long time, but we talk about you often. We think about you often. We wish you were around at Color World. So
thank you. I appreciate that. I think about you guys a lot. Like, it's awesome to see your setup. I wish I want like a video tour of your house.
Okay. I will maybe not reveal my specific location, but we'll take you around so that you feel like you're part of the family. So
perfect.
Appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable, and I hope that stuff is helpful in conversation. The police should absolutely be safe. Let me say this uncategorically, that police should be safe, and they should honor their training, maintain their training, but let's consider using non-lethal weapons. In 2020, if we can take down an elephant to preserve it, to keep an endangered species from being extinct, we can treat human beings with the same love and care. And we can take down a suspected criminal in a humane way, in a life-preserving way, and then let's have them have a jury, have a trial a speedy trial with the jury of their peers in the place where the crime was committed. So,
amen.
All right. Thank you, Victoria.
All right. Thank you.
Enjoy your night. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in.